Hi everybody, this is Joel here. It's been about a week since Taafi, a little under a week since Taafi, the Toronto Animation Arts Festival International, wrapped up, and I just wanted to give you share my experiences there at the Taafi with you. I've been to the festival before, I've seen some shorts and whatnot. This was the first time I did it pretty much, full on the whole weekend, the whole 4 days. I did end up buying the festival pass. It was great. A wealth of content was available to me through that, and I ended up learning a lot and running into some old friends, making some new friends, and yeah, it was a great experience. I didn't do as much as I wanted to do because there was some family events. Obviously, it was the Father's Day weekend, so there was some stuff to do with that. And I had some other family commitments that were arranged prior to the Taafi. So I didn't do as much as I would have ideally done, but that said, I still did a lot and was pretty wiped out even after day one. There's just so much content at this festival. I remember even picking my events. I had to kind of choose, okay, this is awesome and this is awesome. They're both at the same time. I can only do one. And it's like, so what do? You miss a whole bunch of content, but at the same time, you're still getting all of this great content. And you can really tailor your experience that way. So, I had a blast at the festival. And I've already talked about the opening ceremonies and Jack and the Cuckoo Clock Heart in the blog post, where you can read that on the site as well. It's on the blog homepage. But today I just want to give my overview of my impression of the festival. Day one, the first kind of keynote speech, was Swampy and Dan's 16 Years to Air, the making of Phineas and Ferb. What a great way to kick off Taafi. These guys are just, they're so enthusiastic, and they just love what they do so much, and their friendship is palpable. You can tell that on the stage, and just kind of being in the same room with them gets you excited about animation and about being in the industry and about being someone who creates creative content, and you just feel really, it's like a nice perk up of coffee to get the creative juices flowing. It just, you feel so good being in the room with them. I don't want to say they were incredibly lucky, because of course they were incredibly talented. They both worked on Rocko's Modern Life and The Simpsons before that, so they're very talented individuals who worked hard and got rewarded. But that doesn't happen to everybody, and that's important to keep in mind, is that Dan basically said at the end of the talk, make a hit TV show. I highly recommend it, kind of thing. And it's just like, it kind of emphasized the fact that, this can happen. This can happen to you. It's a long shot, and it takes a lot of work, but, it can happen. It's not outside of the realm of possibility. So that's an important thing to keep in mind with a talk like this. But, Swampy and Dan, they just seem like real, genuine, nice guys, and that was a nice part of it too. Like, their personalities are really fun. They had this little rap video, we're animators kind of thing at the beginning of it, and and apart from that, they actually had some helpful advice on how to pitch a show. So I learned a lot and had a really good time with these two incredibly talented, fun people. Next, I had ridiculously great storytelling with Aubrey Mintz and Ellen Muskin, who are they're both teachers, and it seemed to me like a university kind of style lecture, where basically they took the film Spirited Away and made the argument that there is a central conceit that is pretty much apparent in every shot of the film, and for the most part it held up pretty well. Like, their specific take on this film held up pretty well. I think it's partly because they allegedly have seen the film over 100 times together, so they've had a lot of time to analyze it. It makes me think a lot about artistic intent, the intent of the artist, versus the way the audience takes and perceives a certain work, because I can see it in such a way that, it's, Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli, they're very intelligent, very skilled creative people, and there definitely are levels of meaning, but whether it's this specific level of meaning or if it's just something that's perceived by these two people who have analyzed this film in this certain way from a university background, it was always, you so long as you have proofs to back up anything, you can make a solid case for that. That doesn't necessarily mean that's, dogmatically the case. So that was always in the back of my mind, but it got me thinking about, what the artist actually meant. That's always an interesting question. What do they mean versus what do I perceive? If this was a lecture in a film studies class in university, it would have been a really good lecture. Next we had Redesigning Bugs Bunny with Jessica Borutsky. And she redesigned the new Looney Tunes show that was 2011, I believe, that came out. And I actually really enjoyed that show. And, of course, I'm a huge Bugs Bunny fan, so I was really excited to see this. And she basically walked us through this, 200-page plus design book that goes into every character, from big characters like Bugs and Daffy to, Bull and the Crusher from that episode where, Bugs is a wrestler back in the early cartoons, because he made an appearance in the new Looney Tunes show. And it was really neat to see that the designs in that book were not ultimately what ended up being used. I mean, the Bugs Bunny in the new Looney Tunes show was slightly different. She's really good at drawing cute and liked to design bugs really cute, and had an affection for the bugs of the 40s, the football-headed bugs and things like that. So I was trying to take it more back to that style. And she seems like just a really kind of chill, relaxed person who's just kind of cool to just, talk about things. And she was very open about, would flip through the book and be like, oh, I don't like this character. I know many people love this character. I just don't. I still designed it, and that was kind of cool. It was kind of cool that she was just so open and honest about I don't like this, come at me, bro, kind of thing. It's I don't care. But it was great. I wanted to steal a laptop, quite honestly, that had this Bugs Bunny Bible of everything, from just everything about how to draw these characters in that style. It was just really cool. This character I've grown up with and loved, my favorite cartoon character, pretty much, and here's his design Bible and the design Bible of all of his friends. She's also got the chance to redesign a new show, which is coming out very soon. It's called Wabbit, and it's basically goes back to the Bugs Bunny shorts formula. The way she described it, just bugs in the woods, running around, running into new characters, having adventures, hopefully being a wise guy again, because that's the bugs I love, and that's the bugs she loves. So it was a really cool time. It was a really cool time, just chilling out with Bugs Bunny. The next was the event I had was playing in somebody else's sandbox, which was presented by Jim Zub, who has worked on all kinds of different IP, from Samurai Jack, Conan, Batman, Red Sonja, all kinds of, nerdy sword and sorcery stuff and other stuff too. And he's also owns Skull Kickers and Wayward and stuff like that. I think you could have retitled this talk basically Tips for Surviving in the Industry. There was just a lot of good kind of common sense in here, and a lot of times Zub would say things like, I know this sounds really obvious. It is the kind of advice that would sound really obvious, but at the same time, it's the same thing you kind of need to hear again as an artist, especially as an artist who's just beginning to come together and develop who they are. Just really helpful things that you would need to hear again. And he's a really entertaining speaker. Zub is. He's a very verbose guy. I think he described himself as, 1,000 words a minute kind of guy or something like that. And he's really verbose and really funny, and just one-liners off the top of his head. So it was a very fun talk about just, getting along with people in the industry and looking out for yourself and all kinds of stuff like that, being part of a team and knowing what you want. It was the kind of talk where it made you feel intimidated by how much stuff was out there, but also really excited to be a part of all that stuff as well. It was a really good talk, and I think it's especially a really good talk for people starting out in the biz or people reassessing their career. So thank you. Oh, and free comics as well, so that was cool. Thank you, Mr. Zub. Oh, this was a cool talk. This was in the evening. It was animating game cinematics. David Hubert of Eidos Montreal, also of iAnimate.net. He's I believe, the lead cinematics director over at Eidos, and then Dennis Colantes, who is the PM of Ubisoft Toronto, who was on the stage, as well as William Chang of Playfight, the relatively new Toronto studio. Broke into the AAAs really big this year with their trailer for Titanfall, which started off as a fan film and then got picked up to be the official trailer of Titanfall and was premiered at E3. I gotta say, in terms of the talk itself, I think that Playfight was kind of the heroes of that talk, because they and that it was kind of nice that they kind of had more spotlight than even larger studios. It was kind of nice to see. It's like, yeah, I'm here, I'm rubbing shoulders, we're equals now, we're on that playing field. And I think they also got a lot of acclaim because the Titanfall trailer, which does look amazing, was allegedly done in 8 days total. So, I mean, check that out online. It's like, look at that thing. That's amazing. 8 days. That's crazy. Dave Hubert of Eidos at one point just said, yeah, I don't believe you did that in 8 days, because, like, it looked so crazy. But, yeah, there was a lot of fun stuff. There was a lot of, went into the pragmatics of mocap and performance cap, and talked a lot about the ratios, how much different studios, like where keyframing fits into everything. Ubisoft showed the big trailer for the Assassin's Creed Unity. The aristocrat is taken down, and then you just see the mob all around him beating down on him. And they showed the reference footage for that, and it's just animators or hams, is what he said, just hamming it up, and and you know, being an angry mob, just interesting moments of like having to shoot performance footage of like people running by and they're next to a bank, and then running by and like shooting somebody down in the street, like for reference footage, and then getting up and like coming back and doing it again, and them getting phone calls about that. So that was neat. It was neat to see behind the scenes. It was interesting to know the amount of work that goes into it, and the deadlines and stuff about that, and it's just amazing to see how it all comes together. And it's this phenomenal thing. And you think of things like that, like taking a product from the beginning to the end in terms of a cinematic, which is basically a movie. It's basically either a short movie or it makes up, you know, all the movie footage throughout a game. It's amazing to see that all come together. But I mean, that's one of the beauties of film, I guess. You start with this idea, and then it becomes this real thing where people are involved, and then it gets finished. But it's never really finished. But I mean, it gets finished and put out in the world, and that's it. It was kind of just amazing to see that, and just the love and the work and the passion that goes into making these properties come to life. Again, I think Playfight stole the show. I think that was just an impressive first AAA outing for them. Good job. I hope there's more from them. That's really cool. I saw the screening of the Bill Plimpton film, Cheatin'. Oh my goodness. Everybody should see this film, because this is how you do story. This is the way you do story. There's not a line of dialogue spoken, but we get these characters. We get exactly what they're going through. We get the cinematic plot points. And it's not... There are some universal elements. It's a story of, you know, the tumultuous nature of love. You know, these two characters come together and they fall in love, and then one suspects the other of cheating, and then one wants revenge, and there's all those familiar elements. But then there's some out there bizarre stuff that happened, especially towards the end, which is not necessarily in the realm of reality. And the thing with this animation style too is it's very metaphorical, it's very emotional. The man, he's not he feels his partner's cheating on him. They're not close anymore, and they symbolize this where she's lying in the bed, and the bed literally turns into a desert with cactuses and stuff like that. So there's a lot of metaphorical imagery in this. It's very some of it is very kind of abstract and bizarre and out there, but you get what these images mean. It is so incredibly clear. Like, you have to be paying attention, of course. You can't let your mind wander and then come back and be like, what's going on? But the film rewards you for paying attention, and everything is laid out, and it's so complete. Like, metaphorically, everything, and thematically, everything comes back. Like, it's no coincidence that the film pretty much begins at the bumper cars. That's where these two characters meet, at the bumper cars, and that it also comes back there to the bumper cars. Like, it's all thematic, and it's all laid out in story, and these characters are instantly relatable. And the design is gorgeous, but it's also really brave because the characters are such caricatured exaggerations. It's exaggerated and grotesque, but it's also emphasizing the fact that these characters are kind of grotesque because, you know, they jump to conclusions and then they go and do horrible things because they suspect things which aren't actually founded on reality. This is one of the best interpretations of Othello I've ever seen. I'll put that out there. This is one of the best iterations of Othello that's out there. And it's a wonderful story. It's such a relief after seeing so much Hollywood dreck, you know, slogging through, you know, another Spider-Man sequel and Godzilla and just a summer wasteland, to see a film like this where there's story and there's characters and I can follow what's going on and everything's complete and there are themes. Go see this film. This is how story is done. Quite honestly, this is a great film. This is a great film. Wow. So next we had, so this is the following day. This was on the Sunday. First we had compelling character design, and it was all about character design, and it featured Steven Silver and Jessica Brutsky and Dave Cooper. It was just them talking about design. The guys from Guys with Pencils were hosting the talk, and I think they did a really good job. There were enough fanboys that they were invested in it, but they were also, you know, they're also in the industry working themselves, so they brought that perspective as well. So they hosted really well. It became apparent I think about the middle of the talk that I think Borutsky basically just said, this is hard, talking about design, and that makes sense. How do we actually go about talking about design? It's so personal. Like, everybody's got their own style, and the way designers communicate, it's not through writing or speaking, it's through design. So I think that was an interesting. It was a new talk. It was kind of they were experimenting with the format and stuff like that, and so some hits or misses just in terms of format, but it was still neat. Writing for animation, this was an interesting talk. Shelley Hoffman, Robert Piscom, Heather Jackson, Bob Davies of Atomic Cartoons. Basically, it was about, you know, writing for other people's property, and it was interesting to see how actually complicated they made it seem, because I don't know. To me, writing and working with the story editor, it would just be like, oh, I mean, you take agency for your ideas, of course, but I mean, oh, you want changes? Well, I mean, you're the one holding the purse strings. I'm the one for hire here, so wouldn't I serve your? But I mean, that seemed to be the main crux of it. I guess because a lot of writers, you know, it's your baby. You write it into it's your baby with your ideas that you're putting forward. But I don't know. To me, it seemed almost overly complicated. Like, if I'm working for a property, I'm working for that property. I have my own projects, which are my baby, and yeah, if changes need to be made, then I'm going to have a lot of scrutiny, but generally I feel that if you're the one holding the purse strings, then you do have the final say. I mean, obviously you do. So I didn't like, that seemed a little alien to me. There was some interesting kind of conjecture about pitching and board-driven versus script-driven stories. It was mentioned that board-driven isn't so much of a practice in Canada, which is interesting. But it's done on, you know, other shows. It's done on Phineas and Ferb, and Adventure Time uses board-driven. Disney famously began pretty much board-driven. It would just, you know, come from Walt's brain, and he would talk to animators, and they would board stuff out and make animations, but they didn't really have scripts back in those days. That was kind of in the Michael Eisner, Roy Disney, Jeff Katzenberg golden age that they came in with. They were like, oh, this is the way we have to do it now, because, you know, Walt had passed away. We don't have Walt anymore, so we got to start, you know, making scripts, and Disney does scripts now. But they mentioned that board-driven, of course, is more, you know, it's more expensive, so there's not really a structure for that in Canada. It's mostly script-driven. But there are interesting things like that. They talked about the differences between episodic versus Overarching Plots, where Episodic, you're basically going back to the status quo. You're introduced to a situation, you have a problem, you try to solve it. You can't solve it initially, but eventually you do, and then everything goes back to normal, whereas an overarching plot, the story keeps continuing. It seemed almost overcomplicated, but I think that's because a lot of writers are so sensitive of their work, even when they're working on somebody else's property. The final day, the Monday, the final talk, started off with Rex Grignon of DreamWorks, who also worked on Toy Story and was basically a digital animator before there even really was digital animation. He's a Sheridan grad, and said he went to that program and they had, the traditional, and then they had a new thing called like video animation or something. And he got on board with that, I think he just said because it sounded interesting. And this was also one of those talks where you listen to Grignon talk and you kind of want his life. I mean, he's done amazing stuff. He's basically a CGI pioneer. He's worked on Toy Story and then went to DreamWorks and did direction on all of the Madagascar films 1, 2, and 3, and Kung Fu Panda and other stuff too. But Shrek as well, even him just starting out, it was really interesting to see. I mean, he mentioned that we think of Toy Story as the first, but I mean, many times before that, people tried and ultimately failed to create a CGI animated feature. And it was interesting because as he's going along in his career, he would be like, we got to a studio and they could make a logo spin. And that was, wow, it's never going to get better than this. And the next time he's like, oh, they were doing commercials and there was a talking toothpaste. And it's like, whoa, it's a character. The next time there was, actual more than one character in a scene. It's like, whoa, this is amazing. And it was just really interesting to see how those early stages of CGI eventually did develop. And what a crazy career he's had. What an amazing career he's had. And it's the kind of thing where, too, you look at his career and it's like, I want that, but I also want to go and get it for myself. You know what I mean? And it's interesting because he was saying, you have to really scrutinize because opportunities will come along and they won't necessarily look like opportunities. He was at PDI and his buddy Glenn called and told him, hey, you have to come over to Pixar. They need, video animators. And he was kind of like, well, I don't know, not really, no. But it's kind of interesting that you don't really see an opportunity as an opportunity. And I guess the moral there is anything can be an opportunity. You just kind of have to be in the right place at the right time. And his message was eventually, if something in your gut feels like it's the right decision, even if it's, scary or out of the way or is not necessarily exactly what you want, but you have the strong feeling that'll lead to something that you want, you should go and take it. If his career path shows anything, it's that a career is full of little starts and stops along the way, and you just gotta keep going. And I guess they're basically all steps. That was just a really cool talk. It was just amazing. And he's such a humble guy too. He talks about helping invent one of the hugest industries right now, and it's just like, oh yeah, it's a thing. I was starting off, I was doing this, and it's just like, no arrogance, no conceit in the man whatsoever. Like, what? I mean, it was just a pleasure. The whole talk was a pleasure. Very interesting talk on the state of the industry. Talked about basically how the industry is changing, what recruiters are looking for, and talked about recruiting being up but budgets going down, and talked about how we're looking for tangible solutions to those problems. Looked at what recruiters are looking for, looking at the tax credit model, whether that's sustainable. It was the kind of talk that made you want to go out and see your home project through to completion, kind of thing. It was very interesting, and it was really neat to have such a length and breadth, this wide panel, just talking about the industry and where it's heading. And it was very Canada centric as well. There was a lot about Canada and Ontario and hiring Ontario and hiring across the country as well. It was looking at what basically the industry meant to Canada, and it was a very interesting talk. Next we have an animation education, basically institutions that train in animation, and they talked about the difference between classical and you getting your technical skill set, and basically what one provides that the others don't, and the advantages to that, and the fact that a lot of times, like, why do you need that when people don't necessarily look at your post-secondary or your training? They'll just look at your reel. And I think it was interesting because it seemed like a very not everybody there was Canadian, but it seemed a very Canadian panel. Everybody, even though they were coming from there's online schools, and then there's the traditional university setting, and you expected them to be like, grr. But it was very polite. It was very like, I do this with this is what we do with the online programs, and this is what you provide. They're different, but they both kind of complement each other. It was interesting. I think it comes down to, what are you looking for? Do you want to get that technical skill set, or do you just want to fill yourself as an artist? Do you want to have room to go and play and create and make mistakes, or do you want to jump into that career a lot more quickly? And I think the consensus was you don't necessarily need any of this stuff in order to be an artist, or to even work in the business. All of these panels, you'd have an eclectic mix of people who were trained in university institutions and people who were self-made. At the compelling character design panel, both Steven Silver and Dave Cooper said, I wasn't trained out of school. I just made myself that way. And Jessica Baruski was like, I'm the minority here. Like on some panels it had been the opposite, right? So it's very interesting to see that, people come from all different walks of life to do this. And at the end of the day, it's just your skills and it's just your talent, and it's whatever tools you can use to get there. iAnimate is a tool, CalArts is a tool, Sheridan is a tool, and all the teachers there are a tool. And you have all these different resources that you can use to get you where you need to go. It's up to everybody's own path. And even Jim Zub was saying that he had a buddy who I think was an accountant, and would work in his day job as an accountant, and then would get home and draw comics every night for like 5 hours, wake up early in the morning, go to work. When people went out to lunch, he would stay back for his lunch hour and draw comics, and eventually ended up working at Marvel and also doing his day job, because there's never a direct transition. But I mean, to get there, took years and years of him making sacrifices, and that was his path. Other people may have a different path, and that path may be more formalized training, or digital tutors, or whatever. It's whatever you can use as a tool to get you to where you want to go. And you have to know yourself in order to get where you want to go, and to know what you want. And these different places are different resources that will help you do that if you're more suited to that. I know people who aren't suited at all to an academic environment and have done amazing work on their own. I hope it helped a lot of other people out. I hope it helped a lot of people to kind of figure out what they need to do, or at least give them more information about what they need to do. It was a very interesting talk. I was very excited about this one. This was one I didn't want to be late for, didn't want to miss, because there was just such a wealth of information there that I knew I was going to get. The next was called Indiegogo is a Go-Go, and this was all about crowdfunding. Went through all of the different ins and outs of Indiegogo, as well as giving some tips. I seemed to be pivoting throughout this day when I went to different talks, because some talks I would go to, I would feel like, I want to be I want to go out and do this myself, and I want to create my own IP, and I want to create my own creative content, and I want to do it my way. And then other talks I would go to is like, I want to work at a studio, I want I want to hone my demo reel and work on my resume and, get whatever jobs and then do everything that way, the corporate way. And it was interesting. Like, it was really between those two. It was between the established system and kind of the self-driving artist system. And it was really interesting because I would go to one and I'd feel excited about it. I'd go to another and I'd feel excited about that. And it was fun being like, which one am I? Am I an original creative content developer, or am I somebody who wants to work at a studio? And ultimately it's both, because ultimately I believe every artist has a little director in their head that has a little movie they want to get out. So yeah, that was interesting to see. That was interesting, and it was kind of a good realization to have. How I learned to love your portfolio. People from all over the place. We had Nerd Corps and Guru, Smiley Guy Studios, which is a newer, smaller studio doing their own IP. This was great because they went into specifics. They would say, okay, Nerd Corp is looking for this. We're hiring for this here. This is what we look for on your resume. Disney would say the same thing. We're looking for people to do this. We're looking for this specifically. Getting these specifics. Oh my goodness, this panel was invaluable. They told us, studios told us exactly what they wanted and what they were looking for. Thank you so much. That was great. That was great. Like, so refreshing, because you think there's this like invisible wall between you and a studio, especially a big studio, or even a studio that's far away or established or whatever. You're just always wondering, well, how do I get in? For them to just come and tell you this is what you got to do to get in. Thank you. So clear, so simple, so direct, so useful. Such pragmatic information, time-sensitive information. We're hiring here. These are the programs we have available. This is how you can get in. It was fantastic. It was so refreshing to see. Some of these talks would be more talking about like stuff up in the aether. This is kind of what you got to do. This is kind of what people are looking for. Different studios will do this. Different studios will do this. No, our studio does this. This is what we do. This is what you got to do to get in. So refreshing. So useful. And I think part of it is because recruiting is up, and they don't necessarily always have the people they need to fill whatever kind of job. They're looking for things I think sometimes they don't find. Because, and again, I know we live in the information age, but sometimes things just aren't always communicated. Communicating to us this way, directly, telling us what you need as a studio, that was great. That was fantastic. I was so happy for this talk. It was such a wonderful talk. Everything in this talk was practical. Everything in this talk was specific. Everything in this talk could be useful. So thank you to all the presenters for that. That was fabulous. Thank you so much. I couldn't stay for the closing ceremonies again because I had I had family stuff to do. But that was my Taafi, and it was jam packed. It was the first day. I was the Walking Dead. I was completely exhausted because I'd gotten there at 9 or 10 in the morning and didn't get back home uptown until like, I don't know, 1 maybe 2 in the morning. It was completely exhausting, but it was great. So much in the day. There was more stuff I wanted to do. I walked around the arts market a little bit. Arts market's great, by the way. It was basically artists just setting up booths and selling their wares, selling whatever it is they did, from independent comics to apps to whatever, everything, anything and everything. Yeah, I would have liked to have done that more, but it's such a jam-packed time, and it was really, really cool. It's a really good event. They've done such a good job with it. I think they know that people are looking for more talk. Like, I didn't do that many screenings and things like that. I did basically the 2 movies because of time and other commitments and things like that. But I think they also realize people are looking for talks and information about the industry, and they're looking to talk to people who are at different stages in their career in the industry, and what you should do in terms of your own career. And
I think they've realized over the years, over the 3 years that they've been doing that this has become a growing need. And I think the fact that recruiting is up right now, recruiters also want people looking to work more in the industry to have this information and to have these specifics and to know where this industry is heading. And honestly, a lot of these events made me feel like I'm so glad this is the industry I'm in, and I'm so glad I'm here doing this. It was just a really good time. I learned so much. Yeah, so Taafi, it was great.